block space is going to become a finite resource. And Statechains is not the scaling solution for Bitcoin, but it's one of many that will allow more work to be taken off chain. I think most layer twos in Bitcoin all have layers of privacy. If you use sidechains with Liquid, for example, you have confidential transactions. Lightning has fairly strong privacy when you're sending, maybe not when you're receiving, but then again, people are working on that. So every layer two for Bitcoin has potentially less security but more privacy. That's one of the trade-offs you kind of see consistently. There'll be a kind of a game to be the best LSP, and that's going to have an element of algorithmic trading, making sure you've got the best liquidity routes, making sure you're connected to the best nodes. And I think Statecoins potentially would give us more agility there, because we could move liquidity around off-chain easier. From a state chain, we create individual coins, and we call them internally state coins, and that's what you see in the wallet. But think of them as virtual open dimes. That's the great thing about open source. We know people are building, they don't really talk to us, and I think that's pretty cool. Everything we've built is on GitHub.
Nicholas Gregory is the CEO of CommerceBlock, the company using Statechains to power their product called Mercury Wallet. In our conversation, Nick explained the concept and the utility of Statechains. We discussed Mercury Wallet and their upcoming Lightning integration, and we also explored Lightning service providers and Bitcoin transaction fees. If you enjoyed this episode and if you learned something new, the best way you can show your support for this show is by sending in sats over the Lightning Network. You can use any Podcasting 2.0 app. There are dozens out there, but my favorite to use is Fountain. Before we get into today's show, just a quick message from our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. Today's show is also sponsored by Stackwork. And Stackwork is a Lightning-powered transcription tool that takes the best of AIs and humans to create better, faster, and less expensive transcripts. We'll have more from Voltage and Stackwork later in the show. Nick, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining me. I have a lot of questions for you about Statechains, about Mercury Wallet, about Lightning, but I want to start with your Bitcoin background. Tell listeners a little bit about how you first discovered Bitcoin.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a software engineer by trade, and I was living in New York at the time and just working, building software. I saw it on the forums a few times, saw it on Slashdot originally, never really got into it until someone at a gym one day told me you could mine this thing. And then within a while, I started going to Bitcoin meetups, and it became a part of my life. And around 2015, 16, I started to work full time in it. And always building on Bitcoin as opposed to like building. I was never a member of Bitcoin Core, and I think just always trying to build stuff on top. That's been my background with it.
And what compelled you to then build Mercury Wallet? That's what your current project.
Yeah, so originally when we founded CommerceBlock, we were building OTC type software, and then we raised money to build sidechains. And we had a few enterprise clients for sidechains, and these were sidechains on top of Bitcoin. So we forked the Elements code base, which is the same code base used by Blockstream Liquid, and we kind of customized it more for clients. But over time, there wasn't that much demand. We didn't see really much momentum. And then I think around 2019, I think Ruben Samsal did a blog and a white paper about Statechains. My co-founder had worked on some cryptography that could maybe, the original idea from Ruben wouldn't have worked with Bitcoin today. It needed any Preval. But we'd done some work internally about with some cryptography where we could make that work with relative time locks. And it was a bear market. It was that or fold, and we thought we'd give it a go. And it was a new, for me, it was a new, exciting, an alternative layer 2 to Bitcoin. It's what we had experience in, and we thought, why not give it a go and see where the penny drops. Yeah.
So is CommerceBlock, is the relationship between CommerceBlock and Mercury Wallet that CommerceBlock is spinning up different projects and Mercury Wallet is just one of them?
Yeah, when we built Mercury originally, we were still doing consulting around our sidechain clients, but that's gradually kind of gone to zero. The only other project we have is something called Mainstay, which is it's basically a kind of like a timestamping service for Bitcoin. It's still live. It's called mainstay.xyz. Mercury Wallet actually uses it, but we don't really make any funds off it, but we keep it going. It's a key part of our security protocol inside of Mercury, and we always have people building on it, kind of doing POCs. But that's really those two things that we focus on.
Interesting. Is Mainstay similar to open timestamps?
Yeah, but it does. It's very. The idea actually came from Peter Todd anyway. It was his. I think he described many years ago, 2015, single sealed use sets, which is for us, it's kind of a proof of publication. So unlike open timestamps that just writes into the blockchain at various intervals, we build on the previous timestamp. So it kind of gives us a kind of proof of publication protocol. And yeah,
Got
but it
it.
was, yeah. So it's similar in timestamping, but it's got a lot more to do. But yeah, but the idea came from Peter Todd anyway. So yeah, and like
Very
obviously
interesting.
he runs open timestamps. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, well, to set the stage for this conversation, I think maybe we should start by giving listeners some definitions. Because I think the one topic that's going to come up a lot is the topic of state chains. And I think that is, across the Bitcoin ecosystem, still a term that is not really widely understood. And to be honest, I'm a beginner when it comes to state chains as well. I've read a little bit about them, but I don't have a deep knowledge of them. Can you start with a definition of what are state chains?
uh, I guess the invention, the idea, the name came from Rim Samsung, but the way to think of it, it's a chain of states. So you have a UTXO, and you create a set of different states. Those states are kind of transitions of the way the UTXO moves. The easiest way to think of a state chain, and from a state chain, we create individual coins, and we call them internally state coins, and that's what you see in the wallet. But think of them as virtual open dimes. So essentially, the way it works when you come into the wallet, you create a state coin with two private keys. We, as the server, have one private key. You, as the client, have the other. You deposit Bitcoin, and then you're able to move that state coin to in any way you want off chain. So it becomes like a virtual open dime, and that's what it is. And it's a cool way of moving Bitcoin around without any on-chain footprint. And you can do it, a number of times. And it has its limitations. You can only move what's on the UTXO. You can't break that down into multiple denominations. There's also a fixed time you can move them. But essentially what we're doing was we're creating an open dime, which is a physical thing, and we've put it into this wallet, Mercury Wallet, and made it a virtual thing. And it's all based around moving UTXOs around off chain.
Interesting. And so if I'm using Mercury Wallet and you're not using Mercury Wallet, can I still send you that state coin?
Well, no, that person that you would want to send to would have to go to the wallet to generate a specific state coin address. So there's no default LN URL or nothing like that. You can send it to any state coin address. So in theory, yeah.
I see. And so right now the state coin addresses would be generated by Mercury Wallet, or are there any other participants in the state chain ecosystem today?
No, there's a few people that have said they're building on top of Mercury, but we haven't heard back from them. That was, I think, an announcement. Layer 2 Labs, you probably see those guys. They're building stuff in El Salvador, I think, or Latin America. They said they're building on Mercury. But that's the great thing about open source. We know people are building. They don't really talk to us, and I think that's pretty cool. Everything we've built is on GitHub. And I think the guys behind Simple Bitcoin Wallet, they want to integrate with us eventually as well. But we haven't really spoken to them recently. They complain to us to improve our kind of API, which is a bit rough. But and that's one of the issues. We're always kind of like changing it, kind of optimizing it, so it's not really that stable yet. But at the moment, yeah, it's just us.
So talk to me a bit about the importance of state chains in scaling Bitcoin. Why are these so important, and why are they a critical kind of puzzle piece to Bitcoin adoption?
Well, at the moment, block size, block space, block usage is cheap. I mean, we have 3, 4, 5 cents transaction fees, which no one really predicted a few years ago. I still remember 2017 when I was paying $30, $40. But I guess anyone who comes on your podcast or you yourself believes in Bitcoin adoption, blockchains, block space is going to become a finite resource. And Statechains is not the scaling solution for Bitcoin, but it's one of many that will allow more work to be taken off chain. And it's a very basic one at a conceptual level. It essentially allows a UTXO, which is fundamental to Bitcoin, to be moved several times off chain. And just, yeah, it's one of the various tools that will be used to conserve on block space.
Right. And now, when you think about the security and trust trade-offs, can you give a high level of what some of the are the trusted third parties involved in Statechains?
So it's not permissionless. Like, if we were to vanish, you can't use it anymore. What you do have though is a backup transaction. So I think someone termed it once on Twitter, it's proactively non-custodial. So if we were to vanish one day, you do have a backup transaction where the last user can broadcast to the Bitcoin network and retrieve their funds. So yeah, it's not trustless like other systems, but it is, it does require trusting us to always be there. And if we're not there, there is a mechanism to take your funds as well. I guess one of the biggest attack vectors of Lightning is a previous owner could, not Lightning or state coins, a previous owner could broadcast their transaction to steal funds. The way we mitigated that is we have this thing called like an absolute time lock. And if you go into the wallet, you'll see you can only keep your stake coin for 3 months. After 3 months, it basically expires. After that period of expires, the previous owner could broadcast a transaction and take your funds. And there's an element of trust that you have to, the previous owner could cooperate with the state chain entity, which is Mercury, to also steal funds. Now, if that was to happen, the current owner's backup transaction would be cryptographic proof that that's happened. So we call it like kind of proof of scam, but you do have a transaction, a cryptographic asset to prove if that was to have happened.
I see. So when you think about these trust trade-offs and the limit of like the 3 month expiration, what are you thinking of in terms of the potential target audience for Statechains and the use cases? What does this uniquely enable?
Well, obviously, when we built it, we didn't just want to build a scaling solution because Bitcoin transaction fees are quite low, and we had experience with side chains, and it was kind of like a hard sell. So the first kind of like use case we built was coin swaps, which gave us essentially an ability for people to swap their UTXOs around, and that's where people use us today. And in Ruben's original paper, there was a lot of talk about these UTXOs, they don't necessarily have to be Bitcoin UTXOs. They could be private keys to a Lightning channel. So, our roadmap this year is to basically be able to swap Lightning channels around and move Lightning channels around. And as Lightning is growing, you're seeing people are running multiple Lightning nodes, and Statechains could be the solution or the tech to allow you to move around your channels, rebalance them. So instead of me giving you a UTXO or a Bitcoin, I could give you a Lightning channel as well. So that's where we see the eventual goal.
Can you elaborate on how CoinSwap works today?
Yeah, so we implemented like the kind of like a Chalmain blinded coin swap. So you it's a fixed set. So when you go into the wallet, you'll see other participants registered in a certain amount of pools. You register your interest in swapping. You then get a token back, and that token allows you to do a blinded swap. So I think we set our pool size to 5. So when there's 5 people or every time interval, you would randomly swap with any of those 5 participants, or if there's less than 5. And it's kind of blind. It's blinded so that no one knows who swapped with who, and that gives you kind of like a layer of anonymity.
How does that differ from the other kind of like mixing services that have popped up in Bitcoin and across the crypto ecosystem?
Yeah, well, it's very different because with a coin join transaction, you literally get a shared transaction. So if you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, you'll see, 5 UTXOs kind of get munged into one UTXO with various outputs. So that is detectable by exchanges, on-chain firms. They can see a coin join. With coin swaps, there's no on-chain tates because you don't know who swapped with who, and which is better in some ways, worse in some. I would say it's better because you don't have any on-chain taint. It's worse. You don't know who you've swapped with, so you may get a nefarious coin, you may get an undesirable coin. But I think the goal of Bitcoin is that no coin, no UTXO is seen as undesirable. But it's a different. It kind of complements coin joins very well. It's different. It adds to the privacy, and yeah, that's what people mainly use us for.
And does that also require then a large pool of contributors, people saying I'm willing to participate in this to maintain anonymity?
Yes and no. I mean, coin swaps don't have the same heuristics as a coin join. I mean, obviously, the larger the coin join, the more coin joins you do, um, the better anonymity set. With coin swaps, it's very undeterministic. Swapping with 5 people could be the same as swapping with 100 people. It's kind of randomness because essentially, depends who you swap with. Yeah.
I see. So are there any other companies building on coin swaps in particular?
No, we started to build coin swaps because I think at the time Spiral made a grant to Chris Belcher, and he was building an implementation, and I think it was being talked quite a lot at the time. But as far as I'm aware, no, none at all.
I see. So when we think about improving privacy, then are coin swaps and state chains both? Are they separately, privacy improving, features, or is how do you think about the privacy preserving aspects of state chains, I guess?
Yeah, it's yeah. Privacy is not one button you can pick. One button you can switch on. It has different elements to it, but yeah, moving a coin off chain and being able to swap it with someone or give it in a peer-to-peer fashion is an element of privacy. I think most layer twos in Bitcoin all have layers of privacy. If you use side chains with Liquid, for example, you have confidential transactions. Lightning, has fairly strong privacy when you're sending, maybe not when you're receiving, but then again, people are working on that. So every layer two for Bitcoin has potentially, less security but more privacy. That's one of the trade-offs you kind of see consistently.
I see. Okay, let's get into Mercury Wallet specifically, and maybe let's just discuss, why a wallet was the solution that you decided to build.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was we wanted the opportunity to visualize this because state chains, as you can imagine, it's quite conceptually messy to explain to normal users. And maybe it was an ego thing, but we built a lot of back end software. But ultimately, when you looked at it, it was just like a DOS, a command prompt. You build like these complicated side chains. There's no wallet to show. And I think we wanted a way to visualize state coins and visualize the whole thing. And kind of, creativity brings creativity. So we hoped by building this, then other people or maybe us would look at it and come up with different use cases on top. And that's definitely been the case because I think we do get a lot of requests for features and stuff. Some that we have to always turn down because I think could be interesting but very complicated. But it was a good way for us to visualize state chains internally and state coins as well.
Yeah. And do you have any visibility into the types of transactions and the things people are doing today with Mercury Wallet?
No, I think people just come into coin swaps and they play around with it, they swap. And I think that's one of the reasons the last 6 months we've been very much focused on Lightning development because a lot of people have said, look, it'd be cool if we could just come in here, swap, and then kind of exit into a into a Lightning channel. Also, I think the mechanism, the way people pay for stake coins, people aren't too happy about. Essentially, obviously, we take a fee, but we take a fee on exit. And I think people would rather pay for stake coins up front, a bit like you buy a virtual open time. So again, that was another reason to adopt Lightning. So in the future, people won't just come onto the platform and deposit their Bitcoin and then have stake coins. They would buy the stake coins up front for a fee, and that would be it. There would be no more fees. They can do whatever they want. And again, that kind of crystallizes the word, virtual open dimes. That's kind of makes it feel more like that.
Yeah, I like that as an analogy. I want to learn more about how the Lightning integration will work. Can you explain that and how, what do you not have today without Lightning and what will you have with Lightning?
So what we're working on at the moment is having a full Lightning node in the wallet. And we've built that. It's in alpha, buggy. That's why we haven't released it. And that's based on the LDK toolkit. So we worked with the guys at Spiral. They're they've helped us a lot on their Discord channel. And essentially, we're going to have our own node there sitting. There's no backend at the moment. And once we've got that, the next step for us is to allow state coins to be bought with Lightning payments. And then that will very much change the way we operate state coins as well. At the moment, we would say we're not fully blinded, but what this will mean is that when you buy a state coin, internally, we will never see a Bitcoin address. We will just see like the state coin ID, which is some random hash. And so that means that the solution is a lot more fully blinded. So we would never be able to know what's going on at all. And then, once those two releases, we would look to basically integrate state coins and state chains on the back end. We'd think about doing an LSP. But those are the kind of like the two big targets for Q1 this year, which I guess we're halfway through already.
Right. So why would you not be able to see the Bitcoin transaction on Lightning? Is it you're like,
so
you must be getting some information from Lightning, right?
Well, so at the moment, when you come into the system, you deposit your Bitcoin, you have a stake coin, you can play around, do unlimited amount of swaps, send it to everybody. But as you leave the system, we take a 0.5% fee. So we do see that. We see that because obviously we want to get paid. We see a little fee, and that goes to an address that's owned by us. When we allow people to pay with Bitcoin, with Lightning, all we're going to see is a Lightning fee, which we collect. The user then gets a stake coin. They can then put money in there, and then we won't see anything. We'll never know what address they've added. It's just like if you buy, I'll say it again, an open dime or a ledger or a hardware wallet, we'll be operating in that capacity. We wouldn't know what it's being used for.
I see. So what was the reasoning behind building on LDK specifically?
Just that it was modular. We looked at a few of the. I mean, it looked like LND works well as a server, but wasn't really used. Would be hard to build on. And we actually do use core Lightning on the back end, just so we're clear. And, the plugin architecture is quite useful for us. But we thought LDK just seemed to be a better approach for building a node on the wallet itself. And LDK is very modular. It's more of a toolkit rather than a running node. They had JavaScript bindings, and it just felt. And we wanted to be non-custodial. We don't want to know what people are doing. As I said, when people download the wallet, when they run the wallet, it will have its own kind of lightweight temporary node, and LDK seemed like the best approach for that.
And will there be a different target audience when Lightning is integrated versus today? Like, do you think different users will be using Mercury Wallet with Lightning?
Yeah, I think, obviously the Lightning ecosystem is a lot bigger than the Statechain ecosystem. So I think that would allow us to kind of come into that club. And, I don't see state coins and state chains and Lightning as a competition by no means. They're kind of complementary. If you think of all the strengths of Lightning and the weaknesses of Lightning kind of are solved by state coins and vice versa. Like state coins, Lightning is very liquidity inefficient. You need liquidity in the network to move around. Obviously, state coins, you don't need any liquidity. State coins, you can't break into small denomination. They're fixed amounts. Obviously, Lightning does that very well. So they're very complementary technologies. I think they're designed to fit in the same ecosystem side by side.
I see. Now, I want to talk a little bit about changes to Bitcoin, because I think we talked about prior to recording, any prep out being required for state chains initially. You guys have found a solution in the meantime that does not require any prep out. And I recently had a conversation with Paul Stork, Layer 2 Labs, and our discussion about Drive Chain it generated a lot of opinions on whether or not Bitcoin should change and to what extent. And I think there's a spectrum here of people who believe that on one end, the extreme end is Bitcoin should never change. It's absolutely perfect. I think there's very few people that believe that, but there are some. I think at the other end of the spectrum, it is Bitcoin's a technology. It should always be improving. I think there's also very few people who believe that. And then the middle of the bell curve, I think, is kind of like it's a collection of people who say, yes, we probably will need changes over time. We will need improvements, but the waters are muddy in terms of like what improvements specifically will it need, what will it not need, how will we go about making those improvements. It seems like that has been, we've kind of stirred the pot in the last couple of weeks with both ordinals and the topic of drive chain. It seems like Twitter is full of discussions now about whether or not there should be additional changes to Bitcoin. I'd love to get your perspective on the topic of changes to Bitcoin, just because, this any prev out change, that being a critical ingredient for state chains initially, just would love to hear your high level thoughts on, how you approach whether Bitcoin should be changed at all.
I guess one of the reasons why we decided to go with state coins and not wait for any prev out is, we've been around for a while, and I remember years ago waiting for SegWit, and that took 3 years, and there was a point in time I thought SegWit may never happen. I certainly remember when the Lightning guys were like starting to build Lightning without SegWit happening, and luckily it did. And I think we just got to accept that, change is always going to be hard. I mean, I would like to see changes, but even though some of these code changes are relatively simple, the coordination just takes a long time, the testing, and you just have to be present and build with the Bitcoin the way it is today. I mean, I think any prev out will probably happen because it's so uncontroversial, but then it is difficult. I mean, I would have liked Paul Stokes' drive change to happen because I think it would have been interesting for Bitcoin. I mean, at the same time, I do understand the security risks of miners being able to steal the funds, but if they did steal the funds, we would know it was bad. So we'd learn something from it. I think it would be a shame if Bitcoin never upgrades. At the same time, I do accept that we've never seen such a decentralized, distributed product like this. This is kind of unheard of. And you do have to respect, the guys in the middle of nowhere running, nodes with limited bandwidth. And, there are people there that don't have, our networks that, are on, weaker hardware, and we've got to be, we have to respect that. At the same time, if Bitcoin doesn't change, it will die. I mean, clearly the software needs to be upgraded, and it's happening all the time. There's quite a lot of work going on to keep it moving. So I don't know if I'm just sitting on the fence, but that's my view.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a really interesting topic, and it's one that I've kind of just watched from the sidelines over the last few weeks, and just all the varied opinions on it, I think, has been just illuminating to me, because I was not involved in Bitcoin when the kind of the block size wars were really happening. I kind of just started to learn about Bitcoin in 2017, so at the tail end of that, but I didn't have a good enough understanding, and I didn't have an appreciation of how difficult some of these discussions and changes are to implement. I want to learn more about why you think any prev out will happen. Like, what makes you confident that will happen?
Because I haven't seen anybody not debate it why it can't. I think the issue why it's taking so long is just a coordination, and I don't think there's strong enough demand for it at the moment. I mean, we would like it, but we're not making a lot of noise because it's not like we're banging the drum or we desperately need it anyway. But I think, once Lightning picks up speed, and if block space starts becoming an issue, I think there will be some momentum for that. But there hasn't been any resistance, and I think that will be driven just by need. I mean, it's funny, but you talk about the ordinal stuff. It's kind of brought back the block size debate, and everyone's kind of like going, "Whoa, we got 4 meg blocks." And I say to people, "Yeah, but we did this block size increase in 2017. The reason why people are talking about it now is because we've had empty blocks for years, and it took quite a while for SegWit to actually be used. It took, and other things have happened. Exchanges now are doing batching, and I think blockchain.com finally supported SegWit and started, reducing the amount of block space they're using. So it does take a while, and you can't really predict the future. I mean, in 2017, I would have never guessed that you could send Bitcoin around for 3 cents. That's why Liquid existed. I mean, Liquid was supposedly a scaling solution for people to move Bitcoins around different exchanges. It just hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I think is a good point that we can't predict the future, and there's a lot of unintended consequences that can come from any change, and I think that's why some people are they have a strong aversion to change at all, right? Is that the fear is that if we implement a change that does introduce a unintended consequence, that could be bad for Bitcoin. It could be damaging for the whole project. And then now we're starting to hear on the opposite side of the argument people saying, no change at all is a risk too. That in itself is a risk. It's really hard to think about. Do you have a framework for when you look at all the different changes being proposed to Bitcoin? Do you have a framework for trying to think about whether or not one should happen over another?
No, but I'm obviously in the business of building on the protocol as opposed to changing the protocol. But I think when you're building on it, you've got to make the assumption it's never going to change. And again, as I
Yeah.
said to you, I've been burnt waiting for Segwit. It didn't happen. Our model is, so recently we did a blip, which is like a Bitcoin Lightning improvement protocol. We worked with a few of the Lightning guys, and everyone said, "Oh, is your blip, waiting for any prev out?" We went, "No, no, 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 no. It's really as for today." So the blip is essentially just a specification of how Lightning and Lightning and state chains can be integrated into a node. And it's not really setting any hard and fast rules. It's just throwing it out there because that's what we're building. And if anyone else is interested in doing it, it kind of says, well, we've done it. Talk to us. There's a bit of a standard. There's a bit of a standard going on, but yeah, there's no requirements for any prev out at all. It's just looking at Bitcoin for the way it is and working on that use case, on that assumption.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that, you have to build with what you got. And if you're a builder, you can't sit around waiting for 3 years for a change to happen and hope that improves your business at all. So I think that's the right way to look at, building on Bitcoin, is that you have to start with what you got. If you were to get any prev out, what would that change about Statechains as they are in Mercury Wallet today?
Um, it wouldn't be a dramatic change because all it would mean is that people can do more transfers, but I don't think anyone has complained about that yet. However, I do think there are potential use cases that we haven't thought about or others haven't thought about that may appear. Creativity. When you create a creative environment, and it takes a while for people to create things on top. I mean, whether you like ordinals or not, but that was enabled by Taproot. And Taproot was originally designed mostly to improve the scripting of multisig. I think when I remember the conversations about Taproot, it was all about music and music too. And Taproot has enabled ordinals. Now, whether you like it or not, whether you think they're good or not, it doesn't really matter. But it shows that creativity is coming into the space because of new technology. So I do think any prev out will have people guys that are very bright will start thinking about stuff that we haven't thought about. And it will make integration with Lightning easier. There's no doubt about that. We don't have to have these kind of time locks. It reduces the amount of kind of watching we have to do for nefarious behavior. So there will be creativity from that for sure.
Hmm. And then it may also expand the number of transactions that someone can do with a state chain today.
Yeah, of course. Because I don't. I don't think people want to use a state coin knowing that it goes down by. I think we've set it to 8 hours. I think that just limits it. So there'll be use cases, and you can start using it more fluidly as well.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Just a quick message from our sponsor, Voltage. Voltage empowers engineers to integrate Bitcoin and Lightning Network payments into their business stack with an enterprise-grade experience. The team at Voltage is building the complete toolset so that you can do more than simply spin up nodes, but also understand and interpret your node's data. Their new product, Surge, gives engineers the capability to quickly solve problems and optimize operations. With node insights and visibility through time series data, you get dynamic and complex insights never available before. You can get complete control with insanely fast onboarding, advanced client-side encryption, and zero management infrastructure making backups, networking, and upgrades simple. Get a free 7-day trial today at voltage.cloud. What about, I want to talk about Bitcoin transaction fees, because you mentioned a couple of times, you paying $30, $40 2017 for a transaction is now 3 cents, 4 cents. Actually, in the last week or so, with ordinals and inscriptions, it is ticking back up. We're up to, I think I checked this morning, and it was about 40 cents to get into the next block. What's your view on where transaction fees trend over time?
Well, I think it's for people like who come on your podcast to increase that. I mean, if we don't, you know, if we don't create use cases for people to use Bitcoin, transaction fees are going to stay low, and the project's not going to go anywhere. It's that simple. And I think some of the marketing around Bitcoin in the last few years has been very much like buy and hold, and numbers go up. But to me, the issue with that is it has to be used. Money just doesn't sit in a vault somewhere and rot to death. We have to be using it, and to be fair, I think Lightning, things like Nostra are helping that. I like to say Statechains, but I don't think we're adding too much. But yeah, we're part of the conversation. But yeah, unless we kind of create use cases, you see the explosion of Nostra. That's creating use cases that I hadn't thought about, and that's creating that kind of creativity on Bitcoin that we need. But we need to, as builders, build stuff to increase that fee, and then that means our long-term security is fine.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we are on track to, adequately compensate this, or adequately consider this long-term security requirement?
Yes, I do. I think Bitcoin is hard to build on, and there's reasons for that. And if you look at Lightning, it maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it didn't look like it was going anywhere. But it's a much harder it's a much harder environment to build on than say other environments. But yeah, the capabilities it can do is much more significant. It's and that's one of the trade-offs of building on Bitcoin. But if you look at the use cases coming out, with people building relatively simple protocols like Nostra, which, the cool thing about Nostra is that the idea was built by a Lightning guy. Yeah, if that guy, I think Fiatjaf, wasn't a Lightning guy, he may not have come up with Nostra. So you're going to see more and more Lightning engineers build things like Nostra and other types of app, and that's going to create more use cases, which is all really about creating self-sovereign systems, not needing to rely on these 4 or 5 websites for the whole of your life and have your own little ecosystem. Yeah.
Right. What do you think spurred on the explosion in Lightning development recently? And is there something in that process, in that, like, is there anything you can take from watching Lightning development explode and apply to state chain development?
I think there was some good noise. In my view, there were some good announcements at Bitcoin Miami. I mean, I was there last year. It probably wasn't that exciting last year, but the year before, I think the whole El Salvador stuff helped. I also think the libraries helped as well. When I looked at Lightning, it was originally a few years ago. You had LND, which again is good for running as a node, quite hard to build on. The Blockstream implementation is all written in C. Now you have a lot more mature libraries, and not just LDK, you have the Bitcoin dev kit as well. I think that's made it easier for devs to build on top. It's just the growth of the ecosystem. Devs need tooling. Bitcoin historically, if we're 100% honest, was a horrible environment for coders to come on. When I first looked at Bitcoin in 2014, I did not want to be a Bitcoin core dev. I was programming in my J job, and I looked at this code base, which was ancient C++. The scripting language, was very complicated. Didn't exactly turn me on to start working on it. I think Lightning now has got nice libraries, nice ecosystem to build on, and I think that's what you want to do to attract people to build.
Mm-hmm. What else would you like to see to further attract developers that we don't have today necessarily? So this can be either in Bitcoin, Lightning, state chain development, across the ecosystem. What would you like to see added or improved so that we can attract more top tier developers?
I think a more modular kind of like enterprise back-end Lightning node would help. The two main implementations are, they're kind of nice binaries. They work if you want to run them, but they don't lend themselves easy to build on. I mean, Core from Blockstream does have a plugin architecture, which I do think is really cool, and we use it. But if you want to open the covers, it's quite hard. It's written in C. It's young devs coming out tend to be programming higher level languages. So it'd be nice to see like an LDK an LDK version for the backend. I think that would help the ecosystem quite a bit. But that would be my big thing to have.
Makes sense. Now, I want to talk about, I'm thinking about Statechains and potential use cases. And I wonder, is something like escrow related to Statechains? Is that a potential use case for Statechains, or am I thinking about it incorrectly?
You may be right, because the guy who does Surebits tweeted about that about 6 months ago, that he's looking into it. So you may be onto something. But yeah, you could do something like that with what's the technology that they use on Surebits? Discrete log contracts. There's definitely been talk from people to do some stuff like that. We haven't looked into it. I mean, we did actually build some discrete log contracts for a client, an institutional client, many years ago, but we haven't really looked at it for a few years.
Because that seems to me to be a very big segment of the global economy today, and one that is not really adequately served yet. How do you think escrow develops on Bitcoin and Lightning? Is this a feature that DLCs will build?
Well, my experience with DLCs, and maybe we were early, but we did have an enterprise client, a fairly big financial organization. But the issue with them is that they were kind of they were very capital inefficient. And maybe the world needs to change. But at the moment, no financial institution wants capital locked up. And with DLCs, you have to lock up capital for the sequence of the trade or the bet. And I think that was the issue. And funny enough, one of the reasons we started looking at Statechains is that we could move that capital as a DLC. So we had this client where we were building DLCs, and we thought, well, you've got this capital locked up in a DLC, but this could be like a 3-month bet. No financial institution is just going to leave capital there doing nothing for 3 months. And we looked at Statechains originally. Well, we can move it around, because now this is essentially a UTXO, and the state coin could be moved around. You could sell it, you could use it in other operations. So yeah, maybe, but it's pretty complex to do. And if it's X times complexity to do, it's going to be 100 times that to put a UI on top. But maybe down the time.
Right. But institutions today still have to lock up their capital if they're doing a traditional escrow, right? They're also locking up capital.
Yeah, but they can always, depends what you call, but I don't know many escrow solutions, but I mean, we were looking more derivative type contracts. Those tend to be able to be sold at a later date, etc.
Got it. Okay. I want to get into the business then of Mercury Wallet, and think about, how do you think about scaling this as a business, and where are your kind of revenue opportunities?
Well, we currently take a fee for every stake coin created. And we're public about that. It's kind of written all over the wallet. We have an explorer. You can see how many coins have come through, and that's how we take a fee. And as we move to this pay on Lightning, we'll charge fees for selling stake coins. But I think once we integrate stake coins into Lightning fully, we could look at other options. Like, one of the challenges of Lightning is buying inbound liquidity. Now, if that was a stake coin, it could come to you instantly. It doesn't necessarily now take 6 confirmations, and you have a lot more creativity of how you can move around liquidity. And we obviously think stake coins could be a useful tool there, and there will be revenue opportunities for it because of it.
I see. And when you think about I'm trying to understand the business of Mercury Wallet today. You have these revenue opportunities today. I imagine they're relatively small. How is Mercury kind of funded in the short term, while you kind of like wait for
Well, we're a small team. I mean, we're not a big company. We're like, 3 or 4 devs, me, I still code a bit. So we're quite small. But yeah, we would like to grow the back end more to like a Lightning service provider based with state chain software. And I think, you look,
Mm.
then you could get routing fees. And I think, the LSP game it's going to be interesting because it's going to be a bit like, in a way, I mean, there'll be a kind of a game to be the best LSP, and that's going to have an element of algorithmic trading. Making sure you've got the most best liquidity routes, making sure you're connected to the best nodes. Now, I think state coins potentially would give us more agility there because we could move liquidity around off chain easier. I mean, and this is years away from being built. We haven't built it, but I think that's the model we're viewing long term.
Mm. That's interesting. You say algorithmic trading is kind of like a trait of good LSP, or having that skill might be valuable to an LSP. Uh, who do you think is, if you look at all of the companies in the non-Bitcoin ecosystem, right outside of Bitcoin, which company, if you had to pick one to become an LSP, which has the skill set in the real world that is most demanded as a Lightning service provider? Like, I think of something like, when I think about what an LSP might do, or what someone might do if they're routing payments, I think of like FedEx or Amazon, or someone who has a real good understanding of how to move packets of
When I,
physical
when I think of
infrastructure.
algorithmic trading, I mean, we're essentially talking about arbitrage, yeah. And there are, if you've got a node at the moment, I think it's very amateurish, and we're no different. We do run a node at the back, but I think the idea of who you connect with, I think even on your show, I was listening to the guy from Zero Fee, the guy who was running the Zero Fee routing LSP. I think he came onto
Yep,
your show.
zero fee routing it.
Yeah, it was obviously hard work to run an LSP, and he was doing a good job, but it was a very manual process. But clearly, as Bitcoin goes to 20,000 nodes, gets to 100,000 Bitcoin, as Lightning goes to 100,000, Bitcoin potentially sitting there as a liquidity pool. When we see more use cases like Taro, I think Jack Ma's Strike, they're more about sending dollars but using Bitcoin underneath. There's going to be a hunt for the best yield, and that I can't see as a manual process. That's going to be some sort of algorithmic process. I don't think it's going to be people sticking their finger in the air anymore, and that'll be interesting, and
Mm.
that'll be a game, and some will win, some will lose, unfortunately.
And when you say a hunt for the best yield, do you think that it's realistic for node operators today, and many who are hobbyists, to expect to earn a yield on their Bitcoin as a router?
I think long term that's going to be hard, but I think the hobbyists. I mean, I'm on the Pleblet Telegram. They're having fun. That's more about self sovereignty. I don't think the hobbyists will be able to compete against the algorithmic traders, and if they do, it'll be more because of luck. But
Hmm.
that's, I
Do you
mean,
think that?
sorry, yeah, I just think I don't think Lightning will be centralized, but you'll have main players. But so long as you've got those hobbyists are key to keeping this thing honest. It's just like Bitcoin itself. It needs the hobbyist guys at home running these nodes to keep the system honest. And yeah, so long as Lightning still allows for that, it's in a good place.
Hmm. And when you think about the yield that some of these bigger players will generate, do you think? I think right now I've seen various estimates, but I imagine the yield that one can earn as a a node operator, is probably close to 1%. Maybe that's an upper bounds. Is this something that you think goes up over time, goes down over time?
I do think the top nodes will make more than that. But when we're talking about 1%, that's just routing fees. They're going to do other things. They're going to do things like selling liquidity. I think
Yes.
the a lot of the LSPs probably make the majority of their money on submarine swaps. Going from Bitcoin to Lightning channels. So when you combine all that, it's probably going to be higher. But I think we've seen this with most things. It will be a winner takes most. I mean, I think Lightning will be decentralized, but I don't think there'll be more than 5 to 10 LSPs. Once we've hit, you know, I don't want to give a date, but once people Lightning's being used regularly, it's going to be in a handful.
Hmm.
I think there'll be a lot
And
of the
so
same
you,
trajectories like in mining. We go from the hobbyist miner to publicly listed miners. I dare say, I mean, I think there is actually a publicly listed LSP in Canada already. It's a small node,
Yes.
but I mean, but it's a site. I think they're called Liquid, believe it or not, or Liquid, something like
Yes.
that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a step in the future, but I think that's where it's going to go. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, Liquid. They're traded in Canada, I believe. Uh, now, so how much of your focus then is on becoming an LSP? Because the way you describe it, it says, makes me think that there's a big opportunity here. Is there that same opportunity, running Mercury Wallet today as it is?
Sorry, what do you mean? Like, just if we were not to be an LSP, or?
Yeah, like do you see the LSP business being a core driver of revenue for Mercury Wallet over time, or for CommerceBlock?
Yes, but I think we have to differentiate. I mean, you're going to have to. I don't think you can just become an LSP now unless you have something special about you. I think our ability to move channels around with state chains is what would differentiate us, and that's what makes it viable. And I think as a company, we have a lot of experience in building layer two systems. I mean, we've done all three of them. We've built state coins, we've built side chains, and we're doing Lightning now. So I think having an understanding, and a lot of our work is around security. I mean, a lot of the work we've done is in securing our back end, and probably the biggest risk in Lightning right now is these are essentially hot wallets, and I, there isn't much work going on in creating infrastructure for these hot wallets. I mean, you previously asked me what I'd like to see added to the Bitcoin ecosystem. I would like to see more open source tooling on how you can secure private keys in a hot wallet. I mean, we built some open source tools there, didn't really take off, but I think that's where there needs to be some. It would be cool if there was a bit more stuff done. I mean, I think there's one project called VLS, which is pretty cool, and we've actually used it. But yeah, sorry, I may
Yeah.
have pivoted from your question there.
No, that's good. I wonder, do you have any other ideas about how to secure your Bitcoin on a hot wallet? Anything that you've experimented with but hasn't been implemented yet? Feel free to share any of the ideas that have crossed your
Sure.
mind.
So we've built our own project. It's called Lockbox. It's in our GitHub repo. Now it is built on Intel XGX, and a lot of people don't like Intel XGX, but it is open source, and you can use multi-sig with it, and that's the direction we're going. And if you run Lightning on Umbro or Start9, you're essentially keeping the private key on clear text on a operating system somewhere. By using something like Lockbox, which is kind of like an open source HSM, you are using a secure enclave. And if you think Intel XGX is a risk, well, use multi-sig, split it across different geographic locations. But I think that's where we're focused on, and VLS. I don't know who that's built, but I think that's sponsored by Spiral, or they've certainly given grants to it. That's a way of kind of separating your hardware modules so that rather than having the Lightning node talk directly to the operating system to have the keys signed, you can do kind of like a partially signed transaction and send it to like a module on a different kit. And we're thinking about integrating that into what we've done with our Lockbox. But I think that will help a lot of people, help the guys running, because there are going to be Lightning attacks. I mean, I think a lot of Lightning is run on goodwill, but I think as the network grows, there's going to be attacks. There's going to be MEV type stuff. There's going to be malicious people that are going to do bad things. So it'd be good to see those kind of things implemented now before we have some bad news in a couple of years' time, because there are going to be people who lose a lot of money on Lightning nodes. I mean, that's going to happen.
Hmm. Do you think that we have that custody on Lightning today? Taking control of your own keys is that a constraint to adoption? The fact that we don't have some of these tools that you described, that you'd like to see better security measures in place? That's
Yeah,
slowing adoption today?
I don't think it's slowing adoption, because I think most people are playing with Lightning. I think if you look at the Lightning nodes, you've got the major guys like the Async, Bitfinex. I've spoken to a few of those people. They're obviously doing hard stuff to keep it secure, and I think the rest, the plebs, it's play money. But there are people that are going to be caught in the middle. That you are going to have people that probably put a bit too much, and there will be a Lightning. There will be days when Lightning has issues. I mean, we saw last year when the Lightning network partially went down. It is an alpha system, and that's not knocking the network, but it is what it is. It's alpha software. I would say Bitcoin's still beta software. So Lightning is probably pre-alpha or alpha. So
right. Now, if you can put your attacker hat on for a second and just think about if you were to try and attack the network, if you were to try and, be malicious, how would you approach kind of disrupting activity on the network today?
um, I think Lightning lends itself to potentially being DDoSed. That would be my first element. I mean, one of the reasons yeah, I think one of the issues why not many people are using watchtowers as well. So, you could DDoS a node that's sent a few. If you knew if you knew how a node had sent out transactions and you knew the timeouts, you could potentially DDoS it so it didn't come back online for a certain period of time. That's the kind of thing I would look at.
And you think this is going to be something that large node operators face in the short term, or is this more of like a long-term thing?
I think it's potentially a long-term thing. But I think there's a lot of people working. I mean, I didn't want to mention, but I have listened to a talk a few times from a guy called Antoine Riard about his jamming attacks. And I don't know if you've had him on your show, but he's written some
I haven't.
If you Google Antoine Riard jamming attacks, he's talked a lot about the way, Lightning channels can be locked up. And, you could see if a lot of Lightning channels could be locked up, potentially a form of DDoS could happen there. Again, he's written a lot about it. He's also doing a lot of research to fix it as well. So that's a good thing. And, I think it is healthy that the Lightning network gets attacked. I think, unfortunately, people are going to lose money, but every time we get attacked, it gets stronger. So that's just the nature of the system.
Yeah. I think it's a sign of health that people are trying to attack something, and people are, the fact that people actually care when something goes wrong, it means, people are actually using it and depending on it to a degree. And so there's, I think in the earliest days of Lightning that it was hard to get people to care about some of these issues. And now we're seeing enough activity, I think, happening that people are starting to seriously consider what are the security risks, and if something goes wrong, if the network partially goes down, it makes waves in the community. So I agree that it's good that these discussions are happening, that there's people concerned about the health of the network. And I think we're on the right track to see the network succeed. But certainly we're still in early days. I want to wrap this conversation up with I want you to connect the dots for me here, because we've talked about state chains, talked about side chains, talked about Lightning. How do all these puzzle pieces fit together? I know there's some overlap and there's some, they're complementary to a degree, but I want to just hear your overview, your framework, because we've worked on these, all three closely. I want to hear about how these three kind of interact in the broader Bitcoin ecosystem.
Well, I'm a fan of side chains, but I think, there's a lot of reasons why they're not really moving in this direction. I think there's been a lack of adoption in the community because it's been not easy to build on. There hasn't been good wallets, but I still think a lot of the reasons why sidechains hasn't taken off and why Lightning was slow is that we are in a low fee environment. But maybe ordinals is the thing that pushes up fees, the irony of it all. But that's kind of a joke. But I think once fees start increasing, the hunt for block space, for optimizing block space, is going to increase. And I think Lightning has that momentum. It has that community balance. But then ultimately, Lightning will need help. And that could come with any prev out. That could come with state chains moving Lightning channels around, so people don't necessarily have to do an aggressive rebalance, which basically forces like an on-chain transaction fee. If you can do that with a state chain or potentially with a side chain, I think that's going to really help a lot, because if we don't have any prev out, which I think a lot of the Lightning guys want any prev out to have channel factories, which is, years away from being built. I don't think even anyone's working on it. Then things like side chains, state chains can help that. And obviously, I would push state chains more because we're live. We've kind of got the integration with Lightning, and I think that will definitely help, Lightning channels, kind of scale better and give it more options to not use the main blockchain.
Do you expect to see that fees rising on the Bitcoin blockchain acts as a real catalyst for more activity on Lightning, state chains, side chains? Like, is this something that can happen in the short run if ordinals, really clog up the mempool and there's, now all of a sudden it's $20 to make a transaction? Is this something that will have a material impact on the adoption of Lightning and side chains today?
I don't think fees are going to push Lightning, because I think the real beauty of Lightning is just having real-time settlement. I mean, the world's never seen real-time settlement. I mean, I'm a software engineer, but I spent 10 years working for the banks. When you think of the amount of databases that get used, if I was to send you a few dollars, it's just hilarious. To have that ability to settle in seconds, I think that's the killer for Lightning. But as more and more people wake up to Lightning, I do think there needs to be tools that help Lightning scale. I think, I'm going to push state chains for that to happen. Side chains could still play a place, it could still play into that. But I think, Lightning will be driven by, the coolness of real-time settlement, which we've never seen before. And that's going to open use cases. Especially, I mean, look, if you speak to VCs at the moment, they're all investing in AI. Since ChatGPT came out, it's AI, AI, AI. Well, how are these AI components going to talk to each other financially? Lightning is the perfect asset. Yeah? If you're going to have IoT devices with AI doing their own thing, they're going to have to pay for stuff. What's a better tool than Lightning? Having instant settlement. So,
yeah, it seems like most people haven't made that connection yet, that AI and Lightning are perfect for one another. Why do you think that is?
I just think Bitcoin, we're very much in our own echo chamber. If you go to a Bitcoin conference, although they're fun, we speak to other Bitcoiners, not necessarily other people in the tech world. And I think that needs to branch out a bit for sure. Because I think we obviously a lot of Bitcoiners want to go to their own echo chambers because they don't want to be associated with, let's just say other projects that use the blockchains. But, I think, I'm hoping that Lightning, which has a kind of a more of a tech field than Bitcoin does, that that will venture out into other spaces like IoT, AI, whatever. That's cool. But a lot of Bitcoiners are playing with ChatGPT. I think I've seen a lot of them like doing images and stuff and stable diffusion. So I think that's going to merge, and that's going to be cool, really cool.
If you were to put on your builder hat here and just imagine you're not working on what you're working on, your entire goal is to bridge AI and Lightning and make something useful between those two, what would you be working on?
I mean, I think AI sitting on a decentralized relay system, like say Nostra, where you could have like a peer-to-peer, kind of like a peer-to-peer marketplace. I think that'd be very slick.
I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Just a quick message from our sponsor, Stackwork. Stackwork is a Lightning-powered platform for generating high-quality transcripts of all your audio or video content. They combine AI engines and hundreds of human workers all over the world who are paid over the Lightning Network to assemble these transcripts. And that's what lets Stackwork create better, faster, and less expensive transcripts. To see the results for yourself, you can check out my personal website where I host transcripts for all my podcast episodes. If you want to learn more about Stackwork, visit stackwork.com. That is STAK work.com. Okay, I want to wrap this up with a segment I do at the end of every show. It's called the Lightning Round. Got a few rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. What is one thing that you have changed your mind about in the last year?
I guess AI. I did AI for startups before I got into Bitcoin, and it just felt like a lot of hot air, a lot of buzzwords. And when ChatGPT kind of got released, it kind of refreshed me, and it realized it showed me it's real and it's going to change the world probably profoundly.
What makes you optimistic about Bitcoin?
Just the development community is much bigger than it was 5 years ago. The tooling's getting better, and yeah, I just think that the people building on it, and you're seeing a lot of younger people coming from college and stuff building, and that makes you hopeful. But kind of like it's a great time to be involved. It was definitely hard a few years ago. Now it's kind of easy.
Yeah, certainly does seem like there's more activity and a lot of younger developers too approaching Bitcoin and saying this is the cool thing to build on, which is exciting, I think. What is one book that has meaningfully changed your view of the world?
It's going to sound cheesy, but maybe Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now.
Interesting. If you could only hold one asset for the next decade and it could not be Bitcoin, what asset would it be?
Probably silver. For whatever reason, I like buying old silver coins. No real
Silver,
rationale.
interesting.
Yeah,
Why silver over gold?
I don't know. It's got. I prefer its energy. I don't know why. It's
Huh,
just when I hold it, I feel better about it.
interesting. And the final question for you, who is one builder in the Bitcoin ecosystem that you would like to give a shout out to for doing great work?
I'm going to be very biased, but my co-founder, his name's Dr. Chandra Vethan. He's not really well known, but he's one of the few cryptographers in this space who's a genuine cryptographer, and people should listen to him. He does like to antagonize people on Twitter, so he's worth a follow.
Awesome. All right. Before you go, let listeners know where can they find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah, just mercurywallet.com or commerceblock.com, and I'm on Twitter, Gregory_Nico.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today. I hope we can do it again soon.
Cool. Thanks for having us.
All right. In the last 30 days, you guys sent in 217,000 sats. That came in from 103 different supporters. Huge shout out to everyone who's been contributing to the show. We'll run through the top 5 real quick. BTC Curacao sent in 49,000 sats. Nat Gas Immersion sent in 37,264. Blockchain Boog sent in 25,946. Ion 497 sent in 24,534. And Hansi Warlord sent in 14,798. Now, we've also had a number of comments come in the last week or two. Let's run through those real quick. We have Blockchain Boog sent 500 sats in response to episode 94 with Morgan Rochard and said, yep, the management fees. Don McAllister sent in 500 sats and said, if I ever start to doubt the future of Bitcoin and Lightning, knowing that we have such bright and experienced people such as Caitlin fighting our corner, all doubts disappear. And that is episode 87 with Caitlin Long. Blockchain Boog also said, great point in response to episode 94. Someone has to report to IRS about your dealings like a centralized app. Blockchain Boog also said, an index fund for the next 10 years? Boo. And that, I believe, is in response to Morgan Rochard's choice at the end of episode 94 about what asset she would hold if she could not hold Bitcoin. We have a few more comments from Blockchain Boog. He says, nice conversation. I like how Morgan tries to bring reason to taxes, inheritance, and overall record keeping. But I hope Morgan knows Bitcoin could obsolete her business. We have another user, an anonymous user, who says ratio in response to episode 75 with John Light. I'm not quite sure who they were ratioing, but thank you for the 1,000 sats. Juan Frawl boosted 500 sats and said, thank you for the episode. It was very interesting in response to episode 94. And then we have Blockchain Boog says, power to the people. Lightning for the win. Lots of Blockchain Boog comments. Thank you for the sats and for the comments and just engaging with the show. It's great to see so much activity. And you're going back through all the old episodes. Blockchain Boog sent 5,000 sats on episode 6 and said, great summary, Kevin. Bravo. And then we had Michael Machulev boosted 500 sats, sent a lightning bolt in response to episode 94. That's all for the last week or two. I can't wait to see what you guys send in this week, and I'll have more episodes coming up shortly.